Shout out to my local bookshop, Watchung Bookshelf, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to try to convince you to get an e-reader. That is, if you like books. If you don't like books, I'm not entirely sure why you're watching this video, but hey, stick around. Maybe I can convince you to like books. Or not. Anyway, why should you get an e-reader? Well, because you love to read. If you love paper books, if you swear by paper books, and because there is nothing quite like holding a book in your hand, opening it up, flipping through pages. I mean, listen to that. That sound, the sensation, the smell, come on. So I get it. But why is an e-reader better? Well, it's more convenient. Sure, maybe it's not necessarily a better reading experience, but it is far more convenient than carrying around a lot of books. So if you're anything like me, you've got a few books going at a time. Maybe you've got a novel, maybe you've got a biography, and maybe you've got educational nonfiction. And you're going through all of these books at the same time. Maybe you'll read a chapter out of your nonfiction book. Maybe you'll read 2 chapters out of your biography, and then maybe you'll read 3 or 4 chapters out of your novel. So carrying around 3 books when, you're commuting or even going on a trip, it's a bit cumbersome. And I mean, if you're going on a longer trip, you might be stacking a bunch of books, right? You could potentially be going through several books. That's going to take up a lot of space in your luggage. Now, I'm not saying don't buy paper books, because sometimes it's nice to just throw those up on your shelf, take them out for the experience. Now, if you're the type of person who already loves ebooks and you're reading your books on your cell phone or your tablet, stop that.
Stop it. Stop.
That's really not good for you. What's happening when you're reading books for an extended period of time, and let's face it, a lot of us like to read at night right before we go to bed. If you're reading at that time, your brain is being tricked into staying awake. So the light that's emanating from your screen, whether it's your cell phone or your tablet, is forcing your brain into thinking that it's still daytime and that you still need to stay awake, and it makes it harder to fall asleep. I found that to be the case for me. If I'm reading a few articles on my cell phone, it's best for me to not do that right before I'm trying to go to sleep. So my recommendation to you would be to switch to an e-reader. The reason for that is that e-reader technology, or e-ink technology, actually simulates ink on paper. So it doesn't shoot light straight into your eyeballs. Now, a lot of e-readers come with a kind of glow light, but that light is actually pushing kind of away from your eyes instead of being shot directly into your eyes. Since it mimics ink on paper, you don't have that problem of light being directed straight into your eyes. So it's honestly better for you. Now that I have convinced you, let's take a look at a few different e-readers. So the first e-reader that I want to talk about is by a company that I actually forgot was still making e-readers. In fact, I kind of was assuming that they weren't making e-readers anymore. That's Barnes & Noble. And the last time I went to a Barnes & Noble, which was a little while ago because I've gotten more on the local bookshop train recently. Shout out to my local bookshop, Watchung Booksellers. The last time I was in Barnes & Noble, I don't remember seeing any Nook marketing. Like, I remember back in the day, they really went all in on marketing the Nook. They had as soon as you walked into the store, there was like this big display with like 4 tables and, the Nook sign emblazoned across the ceiling. And that wasn't there the last time I went to a Barnes & Noble. I don't know if they discontinued all of those displays or if they like shoved them in the back and hid them away. But they were just gone suddenly. So I just forgot about them. However, they apparently are still making e-readers. Their e-reader is called the Nook. And the one I have here is the Nook from 2011. And it's a fun little device. Nook was actually the first e-reader that I had bought. and I really enjoyed it. One of the fun features of the Nook is that you can go into any Barnes& and Noble, and you can sit there, you can buy a cup of coffee, and you can read any book for free when connected to their Wi-Fi. And I think you can read a book for about an hour or so, or read one book for about an hour or so, and then you have to like move on to another book. I think that's still a feature. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't really do much research, but I believe that's still a feature of the Nook. So if that's something that stands out to you and you like that idea, then the Nook is definitely for you. There are two models, the Nook Glowlight 3, which is the 6-inch model that's going for about $120 now, and the Nook Glowlight Plus, which is the 8-inch model that's going for about $200 now. The downside, though, to the Nook, and it's actually a pretty big downside, is that you can't connect to the Nook store, the Nook online store, and buy books outside of the US. Even though the Nook supports EPUB, which is the kind of standard ebook format that pretty much all ebooks are published in. So you could purchase books from another ebook retailer online and upload them to your Nook. But if you want to have that seamless experience of buying a book straight from your e-reader and then having it ready to go right away, if you're outside the US, you won't be able to do that. Now, if you live in the US and you purchase your books through the Nook bookstore, but then you travel abroad, you can still take your books with you. It's not like they suddenly go away just because you leave the country, but you just can't buy more books directly from your e-reader when you're outside of the US. Another kind of downside to the Nook is that the ecosystem seems, I'm a little concerned about it. Now, the Nook bookstore has plenty of books. I mean, it's Barnes & Noble, but I'm a little concerned that since Barnes & Noble has really downplayed marketing for the Nook, that their support for the device and for the Nook ebook store is dwindling. So the longevity of that ecosystem, it's a little concerning. I could be completely wrong and they could continue to support it and we could see a resurgence of the Nook, and that would be great. But for those reasons, the fact that it's not really usable outside the US and there are concerns about the ecosystem, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. As far as the device goes, it's a great device. It's very similar to any other e-reader. In fact, e-readers across the board are very similar to each other. If you're staying in the same price point from brand to brand, they're all very similar to each other. But I think as far as the device goes, I mean, granted, this is the one from 2011, but the thing is, it hasn't really changed from 2011 to now. The design language is still very much the same. It's not a very modern look, although I'm not sure that you want to go for a modern look with an e-reader, but there's something to be said for the style, and the Nook just doesn't have it. The next e-reader that I want to talk about is by a company that is synonymous with e-readers, and that is the Amazon Kindle. Now, there are 3 models of the Kindle. There's the 6-inch low-resolution Kindle at $60. There's the Kindle Paperwhite, which is sort of their flagship one, and that's the 6-inch high-resolution one that's going for about $130. And then there's the Kindle Oasis, which is their 8-inch waterproof model that is going for $250. The Kindle that I have here is the Kindle Voyage that I got back in 2014. This here was probably the best e-reader experience that I had. And this kind of speaks to the sort of design language of the Kindle. It is a very modern, sleek, premium design. This one happens to have a glass screen. I don't think all of them do. In fact, I'm pretty sure that none of them do. Maybe the Oasis has a glass screen now, but that glass screen really does create a nice premium feel to the device. But the drawback, of course, is how reflective it is. So when you're reading outdoors, this is going to be kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. Now, as far as some of the benefits. Well, like the main benefit is that the Kindle ebook store is the largest ebook store. It's the largest, but not by much. Both of their big competitors actually are quite close to them, and you won't really notice. Most readers won't really notice the difference. Another upside to the Kindle is that they're fully integrated with Goodreads. So if you're on Goodreads, you have a Goodreads account, and you like keeping track of your books that way, the Kindle is a great device to go with. There are a couple downsides. The first downside I'll talk about is the fact that The Kindle does not have EPUB support. So if you want to purchase books from another ebook retailer and upload them to your Kindle, you won't be able to do that very easily. In fact, there is a workaround, but it's really sloppy and it requires some technical know-how. The other thing connected to the fact that it doesn't support EPUB is that it makes it a little bit more difficult to borrow books from your local library. Now, a lot of libraries have actually started supporting Kindle, but the vast majority of libraries don't quite have that support just yet. So the Kindle isn't really the device to go with if you're looking to borrow books from your library. The other downside is, well, it's Amazon. And as we all know, they're kind of an evil company. By getting a Kindle, you're sort of locking yourself into constantly purchasing from Amazon. So there's that. Whatever you want to do with it, that's actually one of the major reasons that I wanted to switch away from the Kindle. The other reason is that I like borrowing books from the library, and I want to be able to do that. So that brings me to the third e-reader company that I want to talk about today, and that is Rakuten's Kobo. So Kobo is a Canadian ebook company that got bought by Rakuten a few years ago. Rakuten is a Japanese e-retailer that's probably very similar to Amazon. So there are actually 4 models of the Kobo. There's the Kobo Nia, which is the 6-inch kind of medium resolution device that's going for $100 right now. The Kobo Clara HD, which is a 6-inch high resolution device that's going for about $120 right now. There's the Kobo Libra H2O, which is the 7-inch waterproof model that's going for about $170 right now. And then there's the Kobo Forma, which is their 8-inch waterproof, kind of high capacity, high resolution model that's going for around $250 right now. The one I have here is the Kobo Libra H2O. So one of the benefits of going with Kobo is that they have a very large ebook store. Now, it's not quite as large as Kindle, but it is probably the biggest rival to the Kindle bookstore. There's great support worldwide. Their US market is really picking up. And since they're a Canadian company, they, of course, have plenty of support in Canada. It's kind of the main ebook or e-reader in Canada. And, of course, being that they are owned by a Japanese company, there's also plenty of support in Japan. Another benefit to the Kobo is that it supports the EPUB standard format, so you can purchase books from outside of the Kobo bookstore and upload them quite easily to your Kobo. And it's very easy to borrow books from your local library through an app called Overdrive. And Overdrive is an app that's available at the vast majority of libraries across the US. And the app is available on Kobo. In fact, it's not just available, it's fully integrated within Kobo, so that all you really have to do is sign into Overdrive with your library card, and you're good to go. You can borrow books, and they show up in your Kobo library as if they were purchased through Kobo, and they just kind of show up there. I mean, there's a little note there that says it's, this is borrowed from the library. You have 14 days to read it, that kind of thing. But other than that, it fully integrates, and it's great. As far as downsides go, I really can't think of any. The Kobo ecosystem is fantastic. The UI is a bit finicky. It's not quite as polished as the Kindle, but on an e-reader, you're not going to notice an unpolished UI like you might on your cell phone, because you sort of expect that it's not going to operate the same way. So the differences between the Kindle's UI and the Kobo's UI, it's very minuscule. As far as the Kobo e-bookstore goes, it is a tad bit dated as far as user interface go. I feel like the UI is kind of the big thing for Kobo, but it's not terrible. It's just that when compared to Amazon, it isn't quite as modern. As far as an ebook ecosystem, I'd recommend going with Kobo. Now, within Kobo, of the devices that I would recommend there, the one I would go for is the Kobo Libra H2O. It's waterproof, so if you're the type of person who likes to read by a pool or read at the beach, this device is going to be great for you. And I feel like the 7-inch form factor is just perfect for reading. 6 inches, it's a tiny bit small. You can change the size of the text for sure, but the device itself, I feel like with more screen space, you get more out of it. I don't know. More is better? I don't know. That's my ebook recommendation. So I hope this video was informative or helpful. If you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like what you saw, give me a thumbs down. And feel free to subscribe if this is the face that you'd be interested in seeing in your YouTube feed once in a while. And head over to twitch.tv/mostlyeasymode, where I talk about tech, I do some drink tasting, and I play some video games. Right now, I am working through the end of Cyberpunk 2077, so if you would like to see how that game wraps up, please swing by, join us in the chat. We've got a great little community going on there, just getting started, but we're having some fun while we do it. I am Nate. This is Mostly Easy Mode, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't play your games in easy mode. See ya!